Ladies and gentlemen, something incredible just happened. A young, independent journalist, a woman that the media ignored, just sent an urgent message straight to President Donald J. Trump. And within just days of her warning, Antifa terrorists were arrested in Texas. You heard that right, guys. The very first real terror charges against Antifa have dropped. And suddenly everything this young patriot said looks prophetic. She wasn't screaming for attention. She wasn't chasing clout. She was trying to save this country from a lie. The lie that cutting off George Soros alone would stop the chaos. She said that the real threat was hiding in plain sight, powered by shadow money, decentralized networks, and the so-called No Kings movement sweeping across America. And now, boom, evidence is exploding everywhere. Soros-funded nonprofits, communist organizers, and Antifa militants joining forces under the banner of peaceful protest. Now, tonight, I want to go ahead and break it all down for you, how one woman's viral plea may have changed the course of Trump's crackdown, and why the arrests in Texas are just the beginning. And more importantly, how the money trail, it leads straight through George Soros, Chuck Schumer, and the radical far left. Stay locked in, guys, because by the end of today's video, you're going to see exactly how deep this goes and why President Trump just got the message loud and clear. Hit the like button and subscribe. Now, picture this. It's late at night and a young analyst by the name of Carolyn Borisenko uploads a video that shocks her entire audience. She looks straight into the camera and says, "Mr. President, you're fighting the wrong battle." Within hours, her words explode across X and Rumble, thousands tagging at real Donald Trump, demanding that he see it. Her tone isn't desperate, it's prophetic. She warns that America's enemies aren't just billionaires that are funding chaos from above. It is the invisible network that is working beneath them. In fact, the timing couldn't be crazier. Riots flaring, protests planned, and the nation on edge. But something about her message really kind of cuts through the noise. Calm, logical, fearless. She's not just talking to Trump. She's speaking for millions who are tired of watching America burn while Washington hesitates. Then it happens. Breaking news. 2 members of an Antifa-affiliated terror cell are indicted in Texas for attacking an ICE detention facility. Now, this isn't vandalism. This is war. In fact, they came in tactical gear, body armor, rifles, and one officer was shot in the neck. Now, under President Trump's DOJ, led by Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, this becomes the first official domestic terrorism case against Antifa. Now, for years, conservatives were mocked for calling Antifa organized, but now the arrests prove it. The young patriot's warning looks almost prophetic. She said Antifa was spreading like wildfire through decentralized cells, and now law enforcement confirms it. But the real question that's got everyone asking, if they started arresting the foot soldiers, how far up does the network really go? Now, when your Medicare coverage fails, it's not just you who pays, it's your family who ends up picking up the pieces. This is why I partner with Chapter, folks. They make sure that your Medicare plan works like a shield, protecting you and your loved ones. Now, one of our viewers, she told me, Chapter gave me the confidence that my family won't be stuck with my bills. So let me ask you, do you want your family to carry the burden that you leave behind, or do you want what most people already are and shielding them? Now, it's overwhelming, and honestly, it kind of makes you want to just tune it all out and stick with your current plan. I get it. I really do, guys. But Chapter is the only group of advisors who review every plan nationwide and recommend what actually fits your needs. On average, they have saved seniors $1,100 a year. Now, most people, they're already dialing that phone number right there at the bottom of your screen, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. That phone number again is 909-563-8279. Oh, and the best part, it's totally free for the Ron Yates community. And if you're already on the right plan, they're going to tell you. But if you're not on the best plan, then they could help you save thousands. Now, the young journalist doubles down. She says that the movement is not fueled by one billionaire writing checks. It is fueled by millions of micro donations, anonymous crypto wallets, and mutual aid groups that ship out gas masks and pallets full of rocks instead of groceries. Cutting off Soros, she warns, won't stop Antifa. It'll just make them hungrier. She explains how their funding flows straight through digital crowdfunding, encrypted chats, and underground nonprofits pretending to be charities. The establishment wants you focused on one name and one name only, George Soros. So while the real network hides in plain sight, her voice trembles not from fear, but from fury, from anger. They're laundering revolution through compassion. And for once, conservatives stop scrolling and listen. Because if she's right, then this isn't just about a protest problem. This is a systemic infiltration of America's culture itself. Meanwhile, Senator Ted Cruz, he takes to the Senate floor like a man on fire. He demands an investigation into George Soros' linked funding behind the nationwide No King's Day protests. Now, his words echo across Fox News: cut off the money and you stop the madness. But the Young Patriot's viral video challenges that idea head on. She argues that Cruz is chasing the decoy. Meanwhile, the deeper threat operates outside of the traditional finance. The tension builds. Cruz represents Washington's hammer swing approach. Meanwhile, she's offering a scalpel. She's not attacking him. She's actually pleading with President Trump to go further. Her plan isn't just to freeze Soros' accounts. It's to starve the system of its digital lifelines, expose the shell groups, and choke the funding pipelines that hide behind progressive slogans. Now, the puzzle pieces, they're starting to connect. In fact, documents are now showing Soros' Open Society Action Fund actually funneling $3 million to a group called Indivisible, which just so happened to have partnered with Communist Party USA, linked organizations to launch the No King's Day rallies. Now, the name sounds harmless, right? No kings, but the agenda, total anarchy. These aren't spontaneous protests. They're coordinated political theater, folks. The young woman exposes the irony. Billionaires funding Marxists to scream about equality. Cameras catch the signs reading "No borders, no police, no Trump." It's really a rebellion dressed as activism, financed by global elites pretending to fight oppression. Meanwhile, they're destabilizing America from within. The Patriot warns, they call it democracy, but it's really manipulation. Her words sting because deep down, millions of Americans, we feel it. This isn't a movement for freedom. This is a movement for control. And then, boom, Chuck Schumer, he steps right into the blast zone. Pictures emerge of Chuck Schumer praising organizers that are tied to the same No Kings network, now under investigation. In fact, the media, they try to spin it, but it's already too late. The young journalist message has already gone viral, forcing the uncomfortable question to be asked. How much did Democrat leaders really know about this, right? So she argues that the left's top brass don't just sympathize with these movements, they need these movements. In fact, they create chaos, and then they pose as the saviors who are going to restore order. But now that President Trump's DOJ is digging into the funding links, Washington is in full-blown panic mode. The walls are closing in. The young woman's warning wasn't just to President Trump. It was a message to every lawmaker who thought that the spotlight would never turn their way. So here's where it all collides. You've got leaked law enforcement briefs and independent journalists like Andy Ngo confirming what the Patriot has been shouting about for weeks now. We've got Antifa militants embedding themselves inside of the No Kings protests dressed as activists, but they're actually operating as shock troops. Their online coordination hubs, Crime Inc. and Rose City Counter Info issued open calls for direct action. This is code for property destruction and assault. Now, it wasn't coincidence, guys. It's clearly a strategy. The Patriot says they move like ghosts. One banner, a dozen faces, 100 names. These hybrid protests are part rally, part riot, perfect cover for a movement that thrives in confusion. She asked the questions that millions are now echoing. If Trump declared them a terrorist organization, then why aren't these people in handcuffs yet? The pressure on Washington skyrockets. And so the answer comes swiftly. President Trump's Justice Department, with Kash Patel at National Security and Pam Bondi coordinating prosecutions, announces the first federal terror cases against Antifa. No more slaps on the wrist. These are material support for terrorism charges carrying decades in prison. Agents describe a sweeping strategy: identify, indict, and dismantle every domestic cell. Now, for years, officials treated Antifa as a movement of ideas, but under President Trump 2025, it's treated as an organized threat to national stability. In fact, the young journalist call finally has a megaphone inside the Oval Office. Arrest them, she said. Put them in jail. Now the president is doing exactly that. But the tension only grows because if Antifa's foot soldiers are being taken down, the next step is obvious. Follow the money. Now, federal investigators, they start tracing the cash, and what they find shocks even seasoned agents. Antifa funding isn't coming from one billionaire. It's coming from thousands of small transactions routed through GoFundMe pages, crypto wallets, and NGO shell accounts labeled mutual aid. So a simple $10 donation online turns into a gas mask, a weapon, or maybe even a bus ticket to the next riot. The young journalist's warning rings out again. They don't need Soros' checkbook. They've built their own. And really, she's right. The DOJ discovers entire digital ecosystems that are designed to launder chaos under the guise of charity. Investigators now believe that these networks stretch across Europe and Canada. So what started as a movement for justice has morphed into a financial shadow web bankrolled by people who will never see the front lines. But as the arrests and the money trail starts to pile up, something else becomes impossible to ignore: the media blackout. Major outlets that spent years amplifying Antifa's anti-fascist branding suddenly suddenly go quiet. No front page headlines, no primetime debates, just silence. The same anchors who ranted for months about January 6th now refuse to cover a domestic terror designation. The Patriot calls it what it is. They are protecting their own. Networks owned by billionaires who share the same globalist donors have zero incentive to expose the funding machine. They would rather bury the story than to admit that Trump was right. And so, of course, independent creators like me, Ron Yates' channel, and others, journalists, patriots online, we end up becoming the last voice of truth, fighting to expose what corporate media deliberately hides from the American people. Now, of course, behind closed doors at the White House, sources say President Trump took notice. After watching the young journalist's viral plea, he directed Kash Patel and Pam Bondi to fast-track coordination between the DOJ, the DHS, and the Treasury Department. The mission? Build airtight cases, freeze assets, and dismantle the network. No more performative politics. This was strategic warfare. Insiders say Trump's team is quietly mapping every organization tied to the riots, from shell charities to foreign data servers. The president isn't tweeting about it. He's acting. And the silence speaks volumes. In fact, the administration's approach, it's surgical. It's not symbolic. The Patriots' warning didn't fall on deaf ears. It landed in the one office with the power to crush the system that she exposed. And the hammer is just beginning to drop. Now, then the story explodes internationally. Conservative outlets uncover No Kings protests popping up in London, Berlin, and even Toronto, using the same posters, hashtags, and slogans as they've seen in Chicago and DC. It's identical choreography across continents. Investigators trace shared digital infrastructure connecting US-based NGOs to global activist networks funded by Soros-backed organizations. Now, the young journalists claim that, this isn't just about domestic unrest, but a transnational protest pipeline suddenly looks undeniable. I mean, you got to look at the narrative shifts, okay? America isn't dealing with random chaos. It's fighting a global campaign to destabilize nationalist governments. Trump allies call it soft warfare. It's waged through protests instead of bullets. And as footage floods in from overseas, one question dominates social media. If this network is global, who's really pulling the strings here? So the young journalist's message cuts through all the noise with one clear demand: arrest them. Not investigate, not debate, arrest. Her logic is brutally simple. If Antifa is a designated terrorist organization, then every act of vandalism, arson, or assault is a felony under federal law. You can't reason with radicals, she says. You can only stop them. So her plan becomes the rally cry of patriots across America. Treat Antifa exactly as the left treated January 6th defendants. Swift detention, zero leniency. Even legal analysts admit that the logic does hold up. In fact, by applying existing terror statutes, the DOJ can lock up organizers, freeze accounts, and dismantle the network overnight. It's bold, it is decisive, and this is exactly the kind of law and order firepower that President Trump's base has been waiting to see. So within 24 hours, the journalist clip becomes a digital inferno. On X, hashtag She Was Right trends globally. On Rumble and Truth Social, her message racks up millions of views. Veterans, moms, truckers, students flooding the comments. Finally, someone said it. Drop a finally if you stand behind this woman, okay? Because even Trump supporters who had grown numb to chaos are starting to feel the spark again. But the backlash is furious. Left-wing influencers smear her as a fascist sympathizer, media watchdogs try to discredit her, and of course, activist networks demand her deplatforming. So instead of folding, she doubles down, posting receipts, citing the DOJ arrests and the daring journalists to fact-check her. It is a digital showdown between truth and narrative, and for once, the truth is winning. Her courage becomes contagious, and all of a sudden, ordinary Americans start asking the same forbidden question. What else have they lied about? Drop a what else have they lied about down below if you're feeling the same courage that this woman is showing here, guys. And that brings us here, October 2025. The message has reached President Trump. What began as a lone video from a fearless young journalist has now become the spark of a national awakening. President Trump's DOJ is pressing full speed ahead, freezing accounts tied to Antifa, investigating Soros-linked NGOs, and coordinating with foreign intelligence to expose the global protest pipeline. The arrests in Texas, they're just the opening act. And as the dust settles, Americans are finally seeing the truth. This wasn't just some random protest movement. This was a coordinated effort to destabilize an entire nation. And one woman's voice may have been the alarm bell that stopped it all. She said, arrest them. Trump listened. And so now the spotlight is on every activist, donor, and lawmaker that's tied to this chaos. Because this time, the reckoning isn't coming someday. It's already begun. Like, subscribe, stay tuned, because the truth, it's just getting started.